It was a cold, rainy morning in the village of Didingwe. The sky was dreary and overcast, and heavy raindrops fell steadily to the ground. The village was quiet except for the sound of rain hitting the earth. Jabu, a young boy of about 12 years, sat under the veranda of a round mud hut. He pulled his legs up to his chest and wrapped his arms around them. His eyes were on the rain, but his mind was far away, thinking about the sad memories of his past. He remembered the day his parents had sent him to live with his aunt. He was just 8 years old then, confused and scared, not understanding why his mother and father no longer wanted him. Later, he realized the reason was the strange illness that had covered his body. His skin was full of wounds that leaked a clear, watery fluid and would not heal. The pain was so bad that even wearing a shirt hurt him. Jabu felt cursed, abandoned by his parents and even by God. Yet, despite all his sadness, his aunt was his one comfort. She had taken him in, loved him without question, and cared for him like he was her own child. But life in the village was not easy. The other children stayed away from him, afraid they might catch his strange illness. They whispered about him, called him names, and didn't let him join their games. The elders of the village, worried that Jabu's condition might spread, didn't allow him to go to school. While the other children learned to read and write, Jabu spent his days wandering alone, with only the birds and animals as his friends. Jabu's time in the forest became his escape. The pain of his wounds was still there, but in the forest, he was free from the harsh looks of the villagers. He spent hours watching the birds sing their songs and the animals go about their lives. Over time, something amazing happened. Jabu began to understand them. The sounds the birds made and the noises from the animals started to make sense. They were not just random sounds, they were a language, one that Jabu somehow understood. One afternoon, while resting by a small stream deep in the forest, Jabu was startled by a loud splash. He looked up to see a large, colorful frog coming out of the water. The frog's skin was a mix of green, blue, and gold, unlike any frog Jabu had ever seen. The frog stared at him with big, round eyes that seemed to hold deep wisdom. Then, to Jabu's surprise, the frog spoke. "Hello, young one," the frog said in a voice that was soft and calming, like the rustling of leaves in the wind. "Why do you sit here all alone looking so sad?" Jabu was too surprised to speak at first. But as he gathered his thoughts, he found himself telling the frog everything, about his illness, his parents leaving him, the cruelty of the other children, and his loneliness. The frog listened patiently, her eyes never leaving Jabu's face. When he finished, she introduced herself. "My name is Mariza the frog. I have lived in this stream for many years, but now I am old and can't catch food for myself. I have become too big and slow to hunt." Jabu felt sorry for the frog. He understood what it was like to feel helpless. Without thinking twice, he offered to help Mariza. "I can bring you food," he said. "I'll catch insects and locusts for you." Mariza's eyes shone with gratitude. "Thank you, Jabu. You are kind, even after all you have been through." From that day on, Jabu made sure to visit Mariza every day. He would walk through the forest, catching insects and locusts, and then bring them to the stream. Mariza would eat them happily, and in return, she would tell Jabu stories about the forest and the creatures that lived there. Jabu treasured these moments. Mariza became more than just a friend. She was someone who didn't see him as different or sick. Their friendship grew stronger with each passing day. Jabu looked forward to his visits with Mariza more than anything else. She was wise and always knew how to make him feel better, even on the darkest days. When he was with her, Jabu felt a sense of belonging that he hadn't felt since his parents left him. But even with the joy Mariza brought him, Jabu's illness continued to get worse. His wounds spread, and the pain became unbearable. Some days, he couldn't even bring himself to leave his aunt's hut. On those days, he would lie in bed, overcome with pain, his heart heavy with sadness. One such day, as he lay on his mat, unable to move, he heard a soft knock on the door. It was his aunt, her face full of worry. She knelt beside him and gently stroked his hair. "Jabu, my dear, you are so strong, but I can see that you are suffering. There must be something we can do." Jabu shook his head weakly. "There is nothing, Aunt. I have tried everything, but nothing works. I am cursed." His aunt's eyes filled with tears. "You are not cursed, Jabu. You are a special child. One day, you will understand why you have been given this burden. Jabu wanted to believe her, but the pain was too much. He closed his eyes, wishing for the suffering to end. The next day, Jabu gathered enough strength to visit the stream, hoping that seeing Marisa would lift his spirits. But when he arrived, Marisa was nowhere to be seen. He called out her name, but the only response was the echo of his own voice bouncing off the trees. Fear gripped him as he searched the area, but there was no sign of Marisa. Hours passed and still there was no trace of her. Jabu sat by the stream, tears streaming down his face. He felt abandoned once again, just as he had been by his parents. The one friend who had brought light into his dark world was gone. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows over the forest, Jabu heard a soft voice calling his name. He looked up to see Marisa standing at the edge of the water, but she was not alone. Surrounding her were several other frogs, all as colorful and large as Marisa. Jabu wiped his tears, relief washing over him. "Jabu," Marisa said gently, "I am sorry I disappeared without telling you. I had to gather my family. We have something important to discuss with you." Jabu listened carefully as Marisa explained that her family had been watching over him since the day they first met. They had seen his kindness, his strength, and his suffering. Together, they had decided to help him. "What help do you need, Jabu?" Marisa asked, her voice filled with sincerity. Jabu hesitated for a moment before speaking. "I want my illness to go away. I want to live without pain, without being shunned by everyone." Marisa nodded. "Step into the water, Jabu." Jabu did as he was told, and as he entered the stream, the water felt cool and soothing against his skin. Marisa's family surrounded him, chanting softly in a language Jabu didn't understand. The water began to glow with a soft, golden light. As the light surrounded him, Jabu felt a strange sensation. The pain that had troubled him for so long began to fade away. He looked down at his arms and legs and saw that his wounds were healing, the skin becoming smooth and unscarred. When the light faded, Jabu stood in the water, whole and healthy for the first time in years. He couldn't believe it. The pain was gone, the wounds were gone. He was healed. Tears of joy ran down his face as he turned to Marisa and her family. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice full of emotion. "Thank you so much." Marisa smiled. "You are a good soul, Jabu. You deserve to be happy." Jabu ran home, eager to share the incredible news with his aunt. She was overjoyed to see him healed, and she praised Marisa and her family for their kindness. But with Jabu's healing came new responsibilities. He could no longer live a life of isolation. He had to step out into the world and make something of himself. Jabu continued to visit Marisa and her family. They taught teaching him new skills that would help him succeed in life. They taught him how to read and write, skills he had never had the chance to learn before. They showed him how to farm, how to rear animals, and how to take care of the land. Jabu was a quick learner, and soon he became good at all these things. With his new skills, Jabu began to change his life. He started small, growing crops and raising a few animals. But as his confidence grew, so did his ambitions. He expanded his farm, taking over more land and acquiring more animals. His crops flourished and his herds multiplied. The once shunned boy became the talk of the village, admired for his hard work and success. But Jabu never forgot the lessons he had learned during his time of suffering. He remained humble and generous, always willing to help those in need. He shared his wealth with the less fortunate, and his kindness became well known. As Jabu's success grew, so did his popularity. Many young women in the village wanted to be with him, hoping to marry the wealthy and handsome young man. But Jabu was not swayed by looks. He remembered the days when he had been shunned and ridiculed, and he was determined to find a wife who had a kind heart, someone who would love him for who he was, not for his wealth. He thought of all the young women who had treated him poorly when he was sick, the ones who had turned their backs on him and called him names. He knew he could never marry someone who had been unkind to him in his time of need. There was one girl, however, who stood out in his memory. Her name was Busi. She had always been kind to Jabu, even when everyone else avoided him. She would smile at him and greet him warmly whenever they crossed paths. Although they had never spoken much, Jabu remembered her kindness and was drawn to her gentle spirit. One day, Jabu approached Busi's family with a marriage proposal. They were overjoyed at the thought of their daughter marrying such a successful and respected young man. But Jabu made it clear that he wanted to speak with Busi first, to ensure that she was truly the one he wanted to spend his life with. When Jabu and Busi met, he asked her why she had been kind to him when no one else had. Busi smiled and said, "I could see that you were suffering, and I knew that kindness was what you needed most. I never believed you were cursed, Jabu. I believed that you were special, and that one day, you would rise above your suffering and become something great." Jabu was deeply touched by her words. He knew then that Busi was the one he wanted to marry. They were married in a simple but joyful ceremony, surrounded by their families and friends. As the years passed, Jabu and Busi built a life together filled with love, respect, and happiness. They had children who inherited their parents' kindness and strong work ethic. Jabu continued to farm and rear animals, his wealth growing with each passing year. But he never forgot where he came from or the struggles he had faced. Jabu became a leader in the village, known for his wisdom and generosity. People came to him for advice, and he always took the time to help those in need. He used his wealth to improve the village, building schools, clinics, and wells. He ensured that every child had the chance to learn, so they would never have to suffer the way he had. The village of Didingwe thrived under Jabu's guidance, becoming a place of prosperity and harmony. But Jabu's greatest legacy was not his wealth or his accomplishments. It was the love and kindness he had shown to others, the way he had turned his pain into something beautiful and lasting. In his old age, Jabu would often sit by the stream where he had first met Marisa the frog. He would remember the days when he had been a lonely, suffering boy, and he would feel a deep sense of gratitude for the journey he had taken. He knew that without the pain, he would never have become the person he was. And so he thanked Marisa and her family in his heart, knowing that their kindness had changed his life forever. Remember, just like Jabu, each of us has the power to turn our struggles into strengths. By showing kindness and never giving up, we can create a life filled with love and purpose. Let Jabu's story inspire you. Show you kindness to this channel by liking this video, by sharing it, and also by subscribing to this channel.